Okay, let's have a conversation about Wizards of the Coast, the OSR, Old School Revival, or whatever you like to call that, and the overall old school tabletop role-playing game community, and why I think there's a battle, a losing battle, being fought where it's obviously lost. You can't compete against D&D with D&D anymore. Or at least the potential of that happening is gone. The reality is Dungeons and Dragons has been squeezed dry. Pathfinder, here's a version of D&D trying to compete with Wizards of the Coast D&D. Well, they did okay, they didn't win. The OSR, so many claims about those games going to compete with Wizards of the Coast, didn't even remotely happen. And Wizards of the Coast, you might think, well, they're failing on the books. But are they failing overall? How much do you know about business? Let's get into it. Well, let's talk over the OSR and the old school tabletop role-playing game community. How many times have you heard people from that area, that department, say shit and you're like, well, that didn't happen, that didn't come true. And then, even as I talk about this, you got to remember, I'm talking to nerds. People that will skip over common sense and pick apart the language and miss the obvious. Like you could say you're talking to the OSR, and there are many people out there that will say that they are OSR. So you know there's a group of people that claim to be OSR, and when you speak, they will feel like you're speaking to them, and you'll feel like you are speaking to them. And then some nerd will come along and say, well, we don't know what the OSR is. And they'll pick it apart to say that what you're saying is meaningless. But in reality, well, you're talking sense to people. You're only talking facts. You've just identified a group of people that claim to be something. And you're going to communicate some information about what they're doing. Oh, you are the OSR. Here's what you're doing. See, all the statements within that will be factual and on point. But the nerd who picks that apart says, all the good information in your statement, all the truth has to be dismissed because we can't really say what the OSR is. You got it when you talk to nerds in the hobby, you always got to remember that they don't come at this like other people. There's a lot of antisocial people here, and their reasons for ignoring the truth can be very, very petty. Don't let them control the dialogue. So when I speak to the OSR, guys get it. That's the game designers, the people playing the games, people that are involved, right? Actively involved in the gaming part, and I guess in the so-called game design or third-party products that the OSR really is. You know, those content creators, that's who I'm talking to. That should be quite obvious, right? So to the nerd out there who wants to say, well, we don't know what the OSR is. Yeah, well, go hide under a rock, man. You miss the entire point of anything being said. Because everything I'm going to say about the situation is true in this video. And if you simply want to say that that group is not identified as the OSR because we can't, well then give the group whatever fucking name you want. People that play OSR games and people that make that third-party content. And I call it third-party content because it's just third-party content for old school D&D. Like, it's a copy and paste of the mechanics. It's not a built-up game. So you're only adding an addition, really. You're given the rules, right? Instead of just bringing out a small pamphlet with the host rules and your theme and your thing, you know, you get to fill that up with the text from the old school D&D. But it's still mostly a copy and paste. So I call that an extension of old school D&D, and that's why I see that as third party. But let's get to the OSR and the old school. How many times have you heard them say, this is going to bring WOTC down, and they're done. They're done, and the sales are hurting. But then you see WOTC's still here. See, a lot of people don't understand business. First off, WOTC doesn't just make money off the books, right? What is one of their biggest ways of gaining money to keep Wizards of the Coast, that extension of Hasbro, afloat? Well, miniatures. Miniatures is a big market for them. And now I want you to look at Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro, and I want you to realize that you got to remember it's Hasbro too, not just WOTC, right? And in that system, these are real business people. So they'll have 20 or 30 of these small, company different names. Like it'll be like, here's a company that goes and buys so much into another business. It doesn't say Hasbro or WOTC, but realistically it is Hasbro or the extension WOTC, right? So if you go look at that company, you're like, all right, man, I'll support these guys because I don't want to support WOTC. And you think you're going to support them and not WOTC. What you don't realize is one of the names on the list of owners, well, it doesn't say WOTC or Hasbro, but it is. So ironically, they're getting your money. They have all these different, because they can go under different names for investing, right? So a lot of the companies you think won't be making miniatures that support WOTC, well, many of them, if you look at the partner list, you won't see WOTC or Hasbro, but it will just be WOTC or Hasbro under a different name. And they own so much into so many of the little companies that you buy dice from and miniatures. Like, I remember back in the old school wrestling, you'd think there's all these conflicts going on between the different companies, only to find out the companies are needing to fund each other to keep each other going. Like behind the scenes, stuff that you wouldn't expect to be happening is happening. So a lot of times, investors, big investors, like a big company like Hasbro, will come invest in a smaller person within the market that might be making something that betters their product, and they want some ownership in that. They want to have some rights to royalties, whatever, and they'll get that through the deal. They'll invest, boom, that person gets picked up, right? And in a way, some of the times, the person being invested in won't even know it's really Hasbro. They'll actually think it's some other small company because it presents itself just as that, right? And if you don't need to inform the person you're investing, if it's all on board and legal, which it is what they do, well, then some people being invested, they won't even know it's WOTC or Hasbro that has the arm into their company. And if you don't think that's how it works, I know a lot of you out there look at things like what's going on in the world and you realize there might be a few companies that own everything. Well, this is part of how they do that. They buy into companies, and then as they die, they might take them over or just adapt them into their system, right? Whatever. They start taking over everything to the point where when you look behind everything, it's like one company. And that's what you see happening with Hasbro, because they will come in and own the market. Like, look, if it's good, if the competition with Pathfinder is good, WOTC would privately invest in them to keep them going if they were to be going out of business. And do you know that about business? Do you know it's good to keep your competition up? Right? And if it is, suddenly people won't expect it because they think it's competition. You're needing to fund them privately to keep that competition on the go. And of course, even if Pathfinder got that funding from WOTC, they would never come out and tell you, right? So, and let's be clear, WOTC and Hasbro makes money off so many different things that are sort of just not public. Where you can see the loss on the game, they take a hit when they're not selling that good, but they make so much money from so many other things. And you can see this with other companies. Like if you went to WWE Wrestling, they had a period of time where, let's be real, the company was crapping the bid, right? Like the wrestling product on TV sucked. Everything sucked. And you're like, well, you're looking at the end of the year like, they made money though. How? Like it's been awful. How? The way they did it was by selling merchandise, selling all kinds of things, and investing in things in back rooms, right? So you don't know what's going on, but they're investing in companies. They're starting stuff you haven't heard of. Like at one point, Vince McMahon was starting all these public companies that you would hear of, like the XFL. At a certain point, they started opening stuff without even announcing it. So there's a lot of companies ran by the WWE, mostly, that are just companies you don't even know have any connection to that company at all. And through these type of investments in these little companies, they make a surreal amount of money. So even if they're failing on the TV product or the wrestling show, somehow the company is still a hit at the end of the year. And you see that with companies like Hasbro. So when I see OSR guys going, oh, this is going to take down WOTC, I'm like, no, it's not. And I think it's being proven that Pathfinder and OSR games are not going to be the thing that takes WOTC out of business. Like, they are established. They are more established than people give them credit for. I hear all kinds of rumors. They're going to sell. They're going to do this. They never do. They never do. They always try to invest back into it. Why are they constantly investing into this thing? Because no matter how much the books fail, it still makes them active in that part, in that community, and their name is important. There's so many other little things that you don't realize why they take a risk or a hit, because they're still making money off some of those risks in ways that you don't realize. It's just, you don't know big business, so you come maybe from the old school and you're thinking, they're going down. I'll tell you, I've been pushing the thing that would put WOTC, would be a threat to WOTC or bigger companies, not right away, but over time, through customers. The only way to truly challenge right now, because you bled D&D dry, you're not going to get it through clones, you're not going to get another Pathfinder. The only way WOTC is challenged is when a new system comes onto the market and becomes a bit more popular. And just over time, it's easier to float over. And what you think couldn't happen, like, you know, the customer base leaving to another game, can happen. Like, Shadow Dark is doing all right, but it's just doing all right like Pathfinder did all right. So there's a bit of a future there, most likely for Shadow Dark, if they're wise with the investments coming in and they're not stupid about business. I hope her team, Kelsey and her team, are very wise about the success they're having, and they're going to turn that even into more success. I wish them luck, because I think they got the support they need to be able to go on that Pathfinder run. But it's not going to be a challenge to WOTC. The only challenge you're going to see to WOTC is, because even Shadow Dark just can't get that big, it's going to be when a new system comes in and gets hot, and that's the new thing. Because people they don't want the new edition to be the edition over here or something of D&D to run away from, to run to. A lot of people say they want a new game, and you think there's tons of new games. They're just not. Most of them are new ones are coming out, or sort of versions of clones, like clones of D&D. And then all the fringe games aren't the type of fringe games they want. Like, they don't want to play Burning Wheel, right? Like, it's not the hot to trot game they're looking for. So the fringe games outside of the D&D clones and that, and some of the other mainstream games like Palladium and Vampire, just don't do it for these guys, because that is a vastly different type of gameplay. A lot of people, because they're D&D people in the hobby, want something different. They don't want a clone, but strangely they want something somewhat familiar or similar in ways. Like, some concepts are approached in a similar way. Like, combat is really strange in a lot of other games where you feel like you're in a fight in D&D. Like, there's an active thing to fighting, there's an importance to it, it's a true focus of the game, it's really important, and it's not just throwaway, right? A lot of combat in a lot of other games, it's just like, okay, you won, cool. Like, it's not the same feeling. And that is something that the majority, if you talk to them, they do want that kind of combat, but they actually don't like the slow, long period of time, long-winded combat that comes with WOTC. It's like, we like the idea, but we would agree with you, Steven. The combat takes too long. Like, there's certain negatives they don't like about it. So the only way you're going to compete with that is if you bring a game on the market that directly decides to compete with the combat, right? And it's not that the combat needs to be the only focus of the game, but it needs to be something that combat in your game feels as important as in the D&D game. And that's why Pathfinder, Shadow Dark, and OSR games, even though they don't compete to take out WOTC, they can do well. Like that's why there's a group. It really lays out in more in the combat than anything. I know a lot of people outside of that on the fringe areas that like more story games, they don't like that. But you are a minority, just to be real with you. The majority want some important combat. Plenty of them can do okay with that, but I still find it's flaky in my opinion. Now, I purposely understood this when I was designing my Neo TTRPG system. And I made a brand new game from the ground up, but one area I focused on was making combat something that can compete with the Dungeons and Dragons combat. Make it important, understand that they were there for some of the early elements of what makes combat important, like the focus and attention on it. So I understood that, and I'll do the same thing. It will be different combat, but it won't be flaky like the other systems. It's going to be a type of combat that competes with D&D. And I tell people, like, innovation is what I'm talking about. Innovation is the only thing that can compete and push WOTC to second place or out of first place. In the long run, this is not short term, but in the long run, you're only going to see that. In the long run, D&D clones like Pathfinder to OSR are not going to do it. Shadow Dark is not going to do it. They're going to be okay. They can potentially be okay, and they can potentially be successful. But success to them doesn't mean they defeat WOTC or harm WOTC in the long game process, right? Innovation is something that's only happened a few times in our hobby, and the tabletop role-playing game hobby. I've been talking about it recently because, well, I'm an innovator. And I realize as I'm coming in with a new game why that whole process has not been a successful one for like 40 years almost, right? Almost every person coming in with the ground up game plan, well, some of them after like the late 80s and early 90s, some of them got in on the fringe after Millennium and Vampire, but they just squeezed in on the fringe, and that's it. And then at a certain point, just all forms of innovation went away. We started calling basic host rules, the advancement of D&D, some form of innovation, but I'm like, innovation is something that everybody can sort of get in on. Innovation for just D&D is just one game or one thing in the hobby. To me, when you're adding a new idea onto D&D, that's third party. Like, unless you're adding it just for the game, that's just an extension of the game. It's not really innovation. And you're not really innovating if you go to the D&D world and say, well, here's an idea, advantage and disadvantage. Oh, you mean that host rule we used for decades in old school D&D? I mean, it's not innovation, but I guess it's new officially in text. They're finally using it like we did for decades, but that's not innovation. Innovation is what is required to compete with bigger companies. And you might think there's no way. Well, just you haven't given innovation really a chance in like 40 years. So it's like if beyond the one or two times innovation was able to really take place in this hobby, if more had happened, there'd be more competition. But the reason Pathfinder, in my opinion, got a tick up isn't because Pathfinder itself was successful. Let me tell you why. Now, you got to understand, when Pathfinder came out, this is just after the late 80s, early 90s innovation. There was innovation in the early 80s. And then you're going to get to Wizards of the Coast, which really is not going to innovate. They're really going to do a lot of things the fans simply want done. They're going to do a lot of host rules into the game. This is what you're going to get. It's not going to be innovation because they're really not taking the system forward. Actually, they're leaving some of the best elements behind, and they brought a lot of new negative elements into the system, which they acknowledge later in each update of their edition. So years ago, when I used to first point this out to 3rd edition people when it first came out, no, that's not a problem, no, that's not a problem. Now that we're at 5e, and the company, and just about every new person in the hobby understands it's an issue, I guess I won that argument, hey? But then we get to Pathfinder. And you might think, well, Pathfinder, man, that was successful. I'm like, this is what you call the customers looking for something. And anything that seems like the thing they want, pin the tail on the donkey. right? It's like the OSR. The OSR in itself is not successful. It's not like somebody promoted the OSR and somehow nobody was thinking about the OSR and then it became successful. No, the OSR is a reaction to customers begging for older material to be sort of renewed, put back on the market. So before you hear about the OSR, there's already a customer demand. You don't get to sell it. It's like having the drugs, right? You don't get to sell the drugs to the druggie. I mean, they're going to look for you. And that's what happened with the OSR. You can't credit individuals with the success. With Pathfinder, people were looking for something to compete with D&D. It's just if you don't know what you're really looking for, you'll grab onto anything. But what did they do? They grabbed onto D&D with host rules to compete with D&D. I mean, I don't know how many people to this day have just given up on Pathfinder. Like the old Pathfinder crossovers, most of them went back and still will say they run 3.5 D&D now. It was a confusing time, and the reason it all happened that way is because Pathfinder was trying to present itself as the new game to compete with D&D, but yet it was just D&D. And so in the long run, it didn't compete. Like, you need something that does some similar things to D&D and does it right. Palladium, I think they attempted to do that with Palladium. I just think Palladium failed on it. No disrespect to the inventor of Palladium. It's an opinion. It's not a... I don't have the negative opinion because I don't like the guy who designed the game. I just think that, yes, that designer understood that combat was important. I think that was wise of him. I think he caught onto something a lot of other innovators didn't catch on to at the time, which is make sure there's a special focus on combat, because no matter what the fringe or the minority says, the majority likes that part of what we do. That's the honest truth. It's one of the big reasons D&D is so popular, right? Like, it's like you have all these opinions, yet it remains popular. It's not like somebody brainwashed these people coming in. The reason the majority likes it is because it's the main focus is combat. I mean, you go back to old school, it's all experiences to do with combat. Well, why would it be that way? Because combat, at the end of the day, is going to be the most appealing part for the majority in most cases. And the majority in the hobby are men. So if the majority of your customers are men, good chance, you know what I mean, you're going to get a tick up when you start leaning over to subjects you know most men are going to be into. That's just the honest truth. And D&D covers that well. Now, D&D is sort of like being like a Rust thing where all the upgrades aren't just the combat. Like Rust, the video game, it's great on the combat, but they focus on quality of life. So there's other aspects now to D&D, I guess, that people can enjoy, but the main focus is always combat. And I always said if D&D starts failing on combat, which I think 5e did, that's your chance to compete with them. But that's a small window, and the only games that can are new innovations. But there's none. There's none getting support. So in a small window, we have to compete with WOTC and really hurt them. You have a bunch of OSR guys coming out going, we got it with our OSR games. No, you don't, man. Every time you say that, it's being wrong. How many times? How many times have you heard a YouTuber from the old school? That's it. They're done. WOTC's done. Are they done? And I don't like WOTC. I don't say this to support WOTC. I say this to be real to people. You're fighting a losing battle in the old school. You keep thinking it means, oh, they're going down. They keep not going down. Because the only type of thing that can compete with them simply doesn't exist yet. That's why innovation is so important, because the thing to compete with them needs to exist, and that thing is boom. That's why the closest competition D&D has gotten is from other D&D, because what's the other D&D doing? It's focusing on combat. That's Shadow Dark, focus on combat. OSR, focus on combat. Pathfinder, still a focus on combat. And you note, they're the only games able, and they're all versions of D&D, competing with WOTC's D&D. And it's just, if there was another game that focused on combat in the same way and did it better and just differently, but just had a similar focus of importance and got it right, just simply got it right, they could be taking advantage of this. I mean, if you think you have a new system from the ground up and you have better combat than D&D, get it the fuck out there and get it out there now. So there, that's my take. I think it's a losing war with WOTC right now. I think our focus on how to push back on them is no good. I think it's been a similar focus for years. The approach has been taken, the experiment tried, and the experiment failed. The claims made about the success were never successful. They were all like, it just never was real. Right? WOTC is fine. The OSR is not competing. Pathfinder, boom, never really had it. And, the Shadow Dark game, yeah, it's going to be successful, but not compete with WOTC. Not even a chance. It's going to require innovation to change this hobby. Right? I still say there's 80% of the ideas that we could have, the potential ideas that could exist, don't exist. And when they tell you everything is already made, it's not. It's not. There's ideas written down somewhere on a bookshelf, on a floor, in some notebook, or in someone's mind, hidden somewhere. And the only way we'll get access to those ideas is when we make it easier for people to come in as innovators into the system and put their work out here. But you can't be using people either. Innovators aren't we're not people for the hobby to use and throw away, right? The idea is you need to reward innovators. You don't just go, oh, hey, you got an idea, let me reward you, and then throw you under a bus. And then later on, we need new ideas. We'll all fucking suck and be mediocre because we're not you. We can't really extend this out because we've been bullshitting. You don't do that. Innovators are people that you want to feel like they're going to be rewarded because then they show up more enthusiastic to get the work done. What innovator wants to come to a hobby where it obviously looks like most of the ideas from innovators are stolen and they're thrown under the bus? And what do you see in the tabletop role-playing game hobby? Every time an innovator steps up and puts their ideas out there, everyone else is going to take them and go cheap and sell cheap and be deceitful and make money. And the worst thing is the customer base supports that deceit and lets the deceitful steal other people's ideas, and then they let those people make money off those ideas, and the innovators are thrown under the bus. I've talked to people that have innovations ready to go for the hobby, but they walked away from the hobby because what they've watched is other people they know put their information up, have it taken away, make nothing while other people make money off of their ideas. It is a plague issue in the hobby. There is no civility. There is no honor amongst thieves. Everyone's cutthroat in the hobby, and it makes it very dangerous if you want to put your work out there because, well, it's almost accepted even by the customer base that it's okay to steal your idea and make all the money for somebody else that will simply go, I took your idea, but I'll tell the audience what they want to hear. Oh, and you have opinions the audience doesn't like, so we're okay with taking all your work away from you instead of supporting you, growing the market and making this healthy and attractive for other people like yourself, Stephen. No, we're going to crucify you in front of other people that are considering what they're going to do next. And I'm talking to a lot of people right now that are innovators. People like are watching what's happening with me, and they're wondering what's going on. Is this going to happen to us if we do this too, Stephen? I'm like, I hope not. I hope that's not what this is, because I've taken a lot of heat putting my stuff out there. No support, no nothing. And you know what's weird? There's a ton of people that say they support independent tabletop role-playing game designers. I'm one of the only people they're going to meet that really fits that description. But when you check out who they do support, it's all third-party content creators. They don't have a single person on the list of people they support that you would call an actual game designer who made their own game. And when they get the opportunity, when they run into a person like me and they finally had the opportunity to back up their claims about supporting tabletop role-playing game designers, you don't get it. The person who's doing the third-party product, who says what they want to hear, that's who gets the money. But I guess, isn't it nice that you can run around saying you're this decent person? I guess it's important to people because they keep saying that they support independent tabletop role-playing game designers. So I'm assuming that means you think that's a good action, and that by saying that out loud, you think people will look at you in a positive light because you support those people, right? But isn't it fake? Because when you run into me, no support. I mean, it's just... And then when you look at the people you do support, None of them fit the description. But yet, even after you choose not to support me, tomorrow you'll be saying it all over again. I support independent tabletop role-playing game designers. Okay, I don't see anybody on your fucking list that fits that. When you're going to start? Trust me, groups like WOTC, the company like WOTC, they love the fact that the customer base does not allow for innovation. Oh my, you allow WOTC to have a stranglehold on this entire thing because the competition that does exist isn't competition and the company knows it. They know that these groups can't beat them. The experiment has been ran. It's been years. We tested this to see if it would be the pushback. It didn't push back. It had all the years to achieve it. Hasn't achieved it. And now all of that's on a decline. It's not even in position to really push back. And even Shadow Dark is just lingering on the edge of the OSR. Right? It's going to be good. Make some money. It's not going to compete with WOTC. I just want to make people aware so they start having a realistic view of what's going on here. And maybe, just maybe, that will change how they approach all this. Approach it based on the truth, not on what you want to be the truth. It just gets us further ahead faster instead of further behind. You know what I mean? It doesn't... Truth will set you free. Okay. For now, I love you. At least most of you. Take care.